me, parenthood is an iterative process which highlights a debate between groupthink and identity within families. It questions psychological and moral values, as well as rejects the subjective idea of normality. As you might have guessed, I am a child of divorce, which has led to having 5 younger siblings, and I won't get into the explanation of how those are distributed. However, this often leads me into feeling pressured into following a parental role with my siblings at such a young age. Along with this, I've also found that society judges my family's dynamics and parental approaches due to outdated beliefs that categorize divorce as taboo. Those are exactly the boundaries that I wish to break down today. You may have heard of the term nuclear family before, which is stated in the 1920s consists of a married couple and their 2 biological children. This term became the cookie-cutter mold to how families would be evaluated for decades. Now, with the era of modernization, the traditional nuclear family unit is no longer applicable for everyone. The AAP states that with the entry of so many more women into the workforce, the increasing divorce rate, and the growing number of single-parent households, other family structures have become much more common. There has recently been an enormous uprising in what we call blended families, which have helped give children a sense of self-awareness, expression of emotion, and adaptability to change, which is typically neglected among Hispanic households like the ones in Guatemala. A blended family consists of any family with step-parents or step-children. Any form of a reconstituted family that has been bonded by love rather than blood. And I am a part of one. As expected, many people will neglect the idea of accepting blended families into society due to legal or economic disputes, corruption of children's minds, or sociopolitical arguments with a conservative approach. Especially with the integration of social media, we see a lot of backlash coming towards parents who are simply looking for a community and for guidance. In reality, there is no right way of approaching parenthood, as it will look different from the perspective of a psychologist, a parent, and a child. According to American psychologist Tracy Burt, children's identities and sense of self are inextricably tied to their families, which is why it's so essential that we embrace their diversity. Now, let's take a further look into the specific debates that overcloud blended families on a daily basis. As I stated before, many people will neglect the idea of blended families into society because psychologists trace children's psychological issues back to their parental struggles, such as divorce or unplanned parenthood. In reality, the root of the issue is not having an unconventional family, but rather how the family handles being unconventional. According to Magdalena Rosak, a scholar on medical sciences, these issues stem from a lack of knowledge and discomfort with the topic, making blended family children feel excluded and unsafe. This is why communication is so important amongst families, yet most will close off to that idea. When discussing parenthood, parents will look at the 3 parenting styles known as authoritative, permissive, and uninvolved. With the traditional family unit, the most common is the authoritative style, and it is recognized as firm and aggressive. But all styles have their pros and cons, which is why it's so important that each of them is evaluated properly. Another debatable topic would be the role of the mother versus the father. Rather than the stereotypical approach, today's ideal father is much gentler and child-oriented, changing the role of fatherhood in many households. If we evaluate all these points, the nuclear family no longer seems so ideal. The issue is not that the nuclear family is bad, as it creates a safe and easy household for children to live in. The issue is that society has pressured us into believing that the nuclear family is the only normal, when normality is only subjective. It fails to be inclusive and rejects ideas of modernization, delaying society's progress towards a more open mindset. This makes me question, if experts, much less parents, can barely agree on how a family should be managed, then why are children constantly under the pressure of defining and understanding what their families look like? What exactly are we looking for in a family? Could it be a sense of belonging? And if so, who says you won't feel welcome in a single-parent household or in 2 different households? It's exactly these boundaries that we need to break. From a parental point of view, the biggest struggle when it comes to parenthood is the existing gap of raising a child how you were taught to raise a child, but in a new and distinct environment, whether that is a new parent, a new sibling, or in a new home. From a child's perspective, it is normal to feel unacknowledged and confused when dealing with change. I still remember the day my parents told me they were getting a divorce, or at least this is how my young self remembers it. My 7-year-old self was called to the table just as the lawyer was leaving the door. My parents were as direct as possible, thinking it would be the easiest way for me to understand. Obviously, all I did was cry, failing to understand why this was happening at such a young age. And just a few months later, I moved to Miami with only my mom and my brother, which flipped my world completely. What I want you to take away from this is not a sob story, but rather a bump in the road, which I can now see was the necessary decision for my family's well-being and both of my parents' happiness. It was this transition from nuclear to blended family that ultimately gave me the life that I have today, and I could not be more grateful. Speaking from personal experience, this transition from nuclear to blended can be made much easier as long as you're open to communication and education. I've had to gather it on my own, but it doesn't have to be this way forever. Although this may seem simple, it's hard because schools, media, and households are often neglectful when it comes to embracing these non-traditional family units. Once again, this may be due to a lack of knowledge and discomfort with the topic, making blended family children feel excluded and unsafe. This brings me to the real question. Why is society so scared to broaden the terms of what having a family means? And the simple answer to that is because humans are scared of what they cannot control. In this case, they cannot control how other people will react, and they're scared that their family's dynamics might change completely. Because of this fear, blended families are approached in a rather neglectful way, when in reality they can help end toxic atmospheres, remove economic strains, end codependency, introduce new parental figures, and bring peace to families as a whole, introducing change positively. What I've personally gathered from growing up in a messy, yet beautiful blended family is that no matter the conditions, reasons, or beliefs under which family is created, it forms a unification among a group of people that will change and grow together in very distinct ways, which is the basis of individualistic parenthood. It is important that as a community we are acknowledged and embraced through the integration of social media, schools, and households in order to educate the young people of the world what the future holds for families. Families like mine. Thank you.